Welcome everyone to an executive summary of the TOGAF 9.1 update that was announced by the Open Group on the 1st of December 2011 at the very end of the year. I'm John McLeod. I'm an Open Group certified TOGAF trainer with Enterprise Architects. We've got points of presence in Melbourne and Sydney in Australia, in London and New York. Here is my email address if you want to get in touch with me to ask me any questions. Please feel free. We've got a Twitter ID there, and have a look at our website at enterprisearchitects.com. The first point I want to make in this presentation is for those of you who are already TOGAF 9 certified, what does it mean to you? Not much. No additional training is required. You do not have to sit an additional certification test, and the certification for TOGAF 9.1 will still be known as the TOGAF 9 certification. So it's not going to be a TOGAF 9.1 certification, it's going to stay at TOGAF 9. If you are not already TOGAF 9 certified and you're going to be attending TOGAF training in 2012 at some time, the classroom training that you receive will cover TOGAF 9.1 from February 2012. You should expect that. Whomever you go to get your TOGAF training from. There is a new TOGAF manual that has been published by the Open Group. It is available for download from the Open Group website. The Level 2 Certification Study Guide has been updated to TOGAF 9.1, but there does not yet appear to be a Level 1 Foundation Study Guide for TOGAF 9.1, and I have no idea when that is likely to appear or if it is going to appear, so don't really know about that. Here is the TOGAF 9 Certified Study Guide, and it will have in it material to prepare you for the Level 1 Foundation and the Level 2 Certification exams and all of that knowledge. So it has been, the Certified Study Guide has been updated to TOGAF 9.1. So the purpose of this presentation is to look at how much change TOGAF 9.1 has actually brought, and to look at anything that is of critical or major importance that people who are already TOGAF 9 certified should know about TOGAF 9.1. And we're going to look at what I think are the most significant changes in TOGAF 9.1. Now, I would say about TOGAF 9.1 that there are relatively few significant changes, but my goodness, there's a large number of relatively small changes overall, quite a few. We're going to look at that in greater detail. Now, I'm going out on a limb here. I'm saying relatively few significant changes. Of course, the Open Group would correctly say that all of the changes in TOGAF 9.1 are significant, and of course they would be right, because many people have spent hundreds of hours to get TOGAF 9.1 to press, and each change has been subjected to intense scrutiny by a panel of reviewers. So all credit to the Open Group for ensuring that TOGAF continues to be a robust, evolving body of knowledge for all of us architects out here who are using it. So many thanks to all the people who have been involved in getting 9.1 out into the marketplace. You've done a great job. Let's look at the nature of the changes and the medium that they have been announced through a technical corrigendum for 9.1, which constitutes 249 pages and enumerates 461 changes throughout the manual, page by page, section by section. Now, I think if you are already TOGAF 9 certified, and you put the TOGAF 9 manual and the new TOGAF 9.1 manual side by side and read through them both, comparing the old to the new, I think you would say that there are no major changes to what you've already learned about TOGAF, but you'd agree that the new manual is certainly better written and it's much clearer. And that is a significant leap forward. for TOGAF, I think. Looking at the categories of change, just to understand the nature of that technical corrigendum, there are editorial changes, major editorial changes, technical changes, and major technical changes. And editorial changes mean it's just rephrasing or deleting text, and really there's no intended change in the meaning of the new language. There were 261 editorial changes. Most of us would look at those changes and say, I wouldn't even notice it. Major editorial changes are more significant, but still there's no change of meaning or the structure or the definition of TOGAF. It's just a major editorial change. There were 21 of those. This would include rephrasing for greater clarity or deleting unnecessary text or moving things around. Still, you would look at those major editorial changes and I think you would say, well, just, that's better. It makes the manual clearer and easier to read and understand, but doesn't really change any of that specification, the body of knowledge that was TOGAF 9.0. Technical changes do significantly change the meaning of the language in TOGAF. There were 132 technical changes, so now it's starting to get serious. But again, as I have gone through all of those changes and read the whole thing from start to finish, and I would, in my humble opinion, I don't think the technical changes are really anything that you would see as being significant. Now, however, there are 47 major technical changes, and now here's where it starts to get interesting. But just a note, there is a little bit of double counting going on here. So major technical changes is a number probably about, a half of 47 is the real number of major technical changes. So editorial and major editorial is mainly rewording for clarity and consistency, and the major technical changes are the ones we're interested in. Now let's look at some examples of each type of change, just to put you in the frame here. An editorial change, an example, would be on page 10 of the TOGAF 9.0 manual, not the revised 9.1 manual. The language on page 10 describes the development of the technology architecture for an architecture project. That's TOGAF 9. In TOGAF 9.1, the language says development of the technology architecture to support the agreed architecture vision, and that is an editorial change. Okay, probably we would all agree that that's not a very significant change, but that's an example of an editorial change. There are quite a few of those. A major editorial change, this is really quite significant, but it really is just rewriting the language, not changing TOGAF in any significant way. In each of the ADM phases that are explained in the TOGAF manual, it used to be that sometimes you could mistake the objectives for that phase with the steps in the phase. In the TOGAF 9.1 update, they have changed and improved the language. So now the difference between the objectives and the steps for each of the phases of the ADM is far clearer, and I would agree that's a significant change. That's a major editorial change. That's an example of that. Technical changes do change something about the definition of the TOGAF specification, but not in a really major way. So on page 5, we saw this language here where it says the flexibility to make, buy, or outsource IT solutions. TOGAF 9.1. TOGAF 9.1 says it is now the flexibility to make, buy, or outsource business and IT solutions. So I think a lot of the technical changes are bringing the concept of, it's about the business into the language of the TOGAF specification, and I think that is where a lot of those technical changes come from. And that's good. A major technical change, here is an example. Do you remember the discussion of progressive architecture development? It was mentioned in the TOGAF 9 manual only in one location on page 59, and it had this progressive picture here where this was phase E down at the bottom, and phases B, C, and D were here, and phases E was there, and the projects were down there. Here was the architecture vision from phase A. Okay, that's been deleted. That's gone. That's a major technical change. And that was the only place in the TOGAF manual that described progressive architecture development, and hey, I can live without that. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to say that only the major editorial and major technical changes are really of any interest to us, and of the major technical changes, not all 47 of those. So I'm going to pick out 6 of the most important changes in TOGAF 9.1, in my humble opinion. Here's the first one. And this is really good. I like this. The document categorization model. Do you remember that? TOGAF core, mandated, recommended, supporting. Core was the fundamental concepts, and really what it actually was the internal system administration of the chapters in the manual. So that's gone. That's a major technical change, and I'm quite happy with that because actually those questions on the level 1 foundation exam, there used to be 1 or 2 questions there about the document categorization model. Nobody really understood why it was in the TOGAF manual, and it's gone, so that is a good change. Change number 2, major technical change. Chapter 19 has been completely rewritten. This is about applying iteration to the ADM. This indeed is a major technical change. Have a look at the new Chapter 19. Download the TOGAF 9.1 manual and just have a scan through Chapter 19. The language is much clearer and easier to understand. And that I'll leave that for you to do on your own, but that's a significant change that I think you should be aware of. Here is the ADM, and we had these iteration patterns, or iterations on the ADM. This iteration pattern here between preliminary and phase A used to be called the architecture context iteration. It's now called the architecture capability iteration. And they've added an iteration between phase H and the preliminary phase. That is a good change that sort of ties up the loop and it makes clear the relationship between phase H and establishing an architecture capability. So I think that's a change that we should be aware of. Is it a major technical change? Well, the Open Group says it is. It's important. So change number 3, there were these 2 graphics in the TOGAF 9 manual. One was relating to architecture partitioning, the other one was relating to the solutions continuum, and they were similar but different. This was the summary classification model for architecture landscapes, and it was to do with architecture, strategic architecture, segment architecture, capability architecture. This graphic was just the enterprise tier, not strategic, enterprise, and then it had segments and capabilities. That was the summary classification model for solutions. This was really quite confusing, and you had to think about this a bit to get it right in your head. Both of those graphics have now been replaced by this graphic, which is the summary classification model for architecture landscapes. This is TOGAF 9.1. And that top layer is now called enterprise strategic architectures, and to my mind this makes an awful lot more sense, and I'm quite happy with that. That's change number 3. Change number 4, in chapter 37.4 in the TOGAF manual, there was a fairly long-winded discussion of how one would identify building blocks, and here was a worked example of how to do that, and to my mind it always came across as being intensely technical in nature and scope, in the interest of the purpose of that example. That has been removed, and I don't think anybody's going to miss that one. Change number 5, for those of us who care deeply about the concept of the architecture repository, and that includes me, in TOGAF 9.0, the reference library obviously replicated the structure of the architecture continuum. And in TOGAF 9.1 we see this, the reference library now has organization reference materials in it. And we've added the enterprise repository, which consists of a solutions repository. That's starting to make some sense now. And a requirements repository. So that's where we're going to put our requirements, and that's a good change. That's a significant change to Chapter 41, the architecture repository. That's change number 5. And I'm just going to tail in this by saying, look at, in the new TOGAF 9.1 manual, phases E and F have been given a good, strong rewrite. And the SOA chapter, using TOGAF with service-oriented architectures, chapter 22, that's been brought up to date. So those would be 3 chapters to have a look at, phases E and F and SOA. And the changes are good. And another thing that is I'm grateful for, that some of the more arcane and possibly legacy names of some of the artifacts identified in TOGAF 9.0 have been renamed. And looking at the new names for those artifacts, I think I understand their purpose a great deal better than I did previously. I think the new names are consistent with current practice in language in the market of architects anyway. Here's something for you to consider, and I'm happy to hear any comments that any of you may have about this, whether you feel the same way I do. What hasn't changed in TOGAF 9.1 that I really wish had is the levels of architecture conformance. Those of you who have done TOGAF 9.0 certification, you remember this was consistent, compliant, conformant, fully conformant, non-conformant, irrelevant, or all of the above. And all of these words begin with C, consistent, compliant, conformant. Most of them are, in general use, mean something positive, but in the TOGAF levels of architecture conformance, they all have slightly different definitions, and I could never remember any of those definitions. I'm sure I missed that question on the exam when I took it. And unfortunately, that is still with us. I just go with the red, amber, green notation, and I'm a simple person. That works for me. This seems a little bit overly laden, but I'll keep moving. Now, the timeline. We need to spend a few seconds looking at this. This is important. What we see here, this is from the Open Group. We accredited TOGAF 9 training courses. That's us, the enterprise architects. We teach TOGAF. We have a choice. We can continue to teach TOGAF 9 up to the end of May 31, May 2012. What we are doing, and I think what many certified TOGAF training institutions are doing, is we're going immediately. We're getting our training materials changed to reflect TOGAF 9.1. So from February, for us, we will be teaching TOGAF 9.1. There's no reason to wait. But from the 1st of June 2012, it's mandatory. Everybody teaching TOGAF must be teaching TOGAF 9.1 from that date onward. And the examinations accommodate both TOGAF 9. The exams, the examinations accommodate both 9.0 and 9.1 until June the 1st, 2013. 2013. Now, what does that mean? This means that you'll be taking the same exam, and you won't really notice. It won't be a 9.0 exam and then they click over to a 9.1 exam, and there's no difference between the exam. I think this implies that you're not going to notice any difference on the exams because of any new language or terms or concepts or changes as a result of TOGAF 9.1. No change. After June the 1st, 2013, the Open Group may start changing the exam questions on the certification exams, but I don't think anything is going to really change before then. Now, in summary, I think except for deleting the document categorization model, sometimes we had some questions on that in the level 1 exam. I think that's being removed. That's not really a major impact, is it? I don't think the 9.1 exams are going to noticeably impact the TOGAF certification exams at all. What we can say is that the TOGAF 9.1 manual is now certainly better written and more internally consistent across the chapters of an 850-page manual. That's quite an enterprise. And the TOGAF 9.1 manual is now easier to understand, and that's great. So thanks for your attention. Here I am again. Here's my email address. Send me an email. Talk to me. Here's my Twitter ID, John McLeod EA, and our website is enterprisearchitects.com. If you're in London or the United States, give us a call through those email addresses or phone numbers. And I look forward to seeing you in a TOGAF 9.1 training course in 2012. Thanks very much for your attention.